Ready, Ken?
Oh, okay.
Oh, well.
Might have to.
Ready? I'd like to call the Board of Commissioners of Port of Bellingham meeting to order for October 4th. We're going to go for our roll call here. Commissioner Shepard,
Here.
Commissioner Bell.
Present.
Then we'll move to public comment. Do we have anyone who, you're shaking your head no? We have anybody online who wants to say anything? Speak up now or forever hold your peace. Okay, no public comment. We'll move to the advisory committee meeting schedule. The Marina Advisory Committee, the MAC, will meet October 11th at 6 p.m. here in the Harbor Center Building Conference Room, in person only, no Zoom. And the Bellingham International Airport Advisory Committee, the BIAC, will meet October 13th at 4 p.m. Zoom only. So no in-person, Zoom only. Those folks must be scared. It's not a social group, or how on that? So, they're just not a social gathering?
Small groups susceptible to COVID quarantine, and then the airport operations would be impacted.
Okay, very good.
We still have people getting COVID, just another case last week.
All right, so that meeting is Zoom only, and it's October 13th at 4 p.m. again, the BIAC. So, Carrie, if you would please.
Motion to approve consent agenda items A through J.
Commissioner Bell, any questions?
I have none.
Commissioner Shepard, any questions?
I just have one on C, seeing that Sunil is here, about the foam. We've talked about this a couple times before. I know we are under obligation from FAA to continue using this foam. The FAA is also trying to find a replacement, as I understand. Any update on that process?
Actually, I do, Commissioner. I have this 59-page report, which I'm not going to read to you.
Can we condense that a little?
But the FAA Test Center, which is in Atlantic City, the William Hughes Technical Center, conducted a test of fluorine-free foam tests that are commercially available, including the IKO used with the European Union, and they concluded that none of the FFEs evaluated had an equivalent extinguishing performance to the AFFF, which is specified now, while others performed metrics with physical characteristics that could be met or surpassed. The primary metric of concern is the extinguishment performance of the foam on Jet A fuel. In all the tests, the AFFF surpassed the FFF in the performance of consistently and quickly suppressing Jet A fire. So the FAA has concluded that there is no product out there of equivalent. Now, this is the testing. They were ordered by Congress in the reauthorization bill to find a substitute by October of 2021. How this report is now going to be sent back to Congress was just issued 2 months ago, and what actions were taken, I don't know. But I don't understand why they can't adopt what the ICAO uses, which is deemed adequate by the rest of the free world. So that's where we are. Our own testing now is limited to testing within the apparatus that we've installed in our vehicles. So we don't do any live discharge testing. There's a cert alert that says we can, as long as we're able to use a refractometer and test the concentration of foam and water, that it'll effectively suppress a fire if needed, that's acceptable. Now, in an actual fire, we will discharge the foam. There is some promise. I think Commissioner Bell could probably speak to this. Landfills have used microbes, and since then, even petroleum chemicals and other compounds have had some success with microbes actually consuming and disposing of. And an airport just tested microbes on PFAS and is finding success. So there may be a way to remediate with microbes, but it's a slow, long process.
Okay. So we're going to be using this for some time to come, it sounds like, and we're going to probably have to expect more bills for disposal.
Yes, this was an installation failure, so there was cross-contamination where the AFFF PFAS got into the clean water tank. We had to then rinse that tank out 3 or 4 times. Maintenance still has the vehicle in repair, that's ARF2. And I requested that they empty the tank when they do a test and just use a small quantity of water, so we don't spend $89,000 disposing of gallons, 14,000 gallons of water.
All right, thank you.
Isn't there a way to do a test without actually using the foam? Or do we have to actually use the foam?
The test is in an apparatus that's been approved by the FAA, one of 4. We've installed them on both our trucks, so they're part of the truck now. ARF2 has had some mechanical issues with that installation. ARF1, we conduct this no foam test on board and use equipment to ensure that the concentrations are correct and the mix is correct, so that when there's an actual fire, we have confidence that we'll be able to knock it down quickly.
Sorry you're dealing with this.
I'm sorry I'm dealing with this.
Yeah, it's not good for anybody. It's the health impacts are known, the environmental impacts are known, but we will continue to abide by the rules we have to play by.
Yes.
Okay, thank you,
Thank you,
Sunil.
Commissioner.
Thank you, Sunil.
I don't have any other questions.
I do have a question on our surplus equipment. And I'm sure I've asked this at some point since I became commissioner. How do we do that? Do we auction that stuff out? Do we seal bid the stuff out? How does that work? Just so maybe people know that they can maybe buy some of our surplus stuff if they're
Yeah,
watching
so
YouTube.
my understanding is it gets sent to Meridian Auction here in town.
Okay, out on the guide there to
Yep.
Meridian Auction Center? Okay, and then they just auction it
Yep.
out? Okay, so everybody has access to it then?
Yes.
All right, very good, thank you. I have nothing, so
You need a pipe bender or
looking for a ball
an
peen hammer.
outboard? Yeah.
Carrie, if you please.
Motion to approve consent agenda items A through J.
Commissioner Bell,
Yes.
Commissioner Shepherd,
Yes.
Commissioner Briscoe's yes, carries 3-0. So our presentation, I think that's Adrian, I believe.
It is. She's going to give us an update on climate action strategy.
Good afternoon. It's nice to be here in front of you all for the first time in a very long time. My name is Adrian Hedgedus. I am the Sustainability Program Manager for the Port of Bellingham. And today I have an update for you, so no formal action to be taken, just discussion and feedback. And I do want to start by saying thank you to all of the staff and divisions that have put a lot of effort into this work. Yes. Was it sleeping? Oh, it's not sleeping here. Sorry.
Black screen, we're in trouble.
No, not again. There we go. Okay. Sounds good. Nope.
One end of the wire.
It wasn't a movie once.
Just gonna go grab the IT people. They know this better than I do. It's been doing this lately. How's it? Yeah. So, but if we go.
Have a technical difficulties. Stand by.
Taking aluminum foil and squishing it around.
The TV antenna?
Make it about that long.
Yeah. Or your stereo, you got double wire running all over the place for the antenna to get the FM.
In the corner of the window, because you know that's where it might pick it up.
Yeah.
I rebooted it.
Should I? Okay, I'll just talk until somebody may have to yell at me if they go black again. Yes. Okay, so that means that if for everybody, you guys, Adam?
Get that Phillips head screwdriver out, tighten it up.
Yeah.
Hans.
Okay, and this means that for folks that are on Zoom, if you need to say something, we won't see you visually because we have you minimized at this end. So I'll just start. Cross my fingers. Okay. So again, my name is Adrienne Hedgedus. I'm the Sustainability Program Manager for the Port of Bellingham. Today is an update, no formal action to be taken. And I just want to recognize the amount of work that went into this by everybody across the port. So today I'm going to be discussing the climate action strategy work that has been underway for a number of years now. It went black again.
Just keep going. You have
Does that mean that, okay, but does that mean, and do you have it in front of you? No. You can't see it? Oh, now you can. So we're also going to be talking about the vision for this work, the targets and goals for the components of the climate action strategy, as well as some current actions and future actions. And I won't go into too much detail on those, but to say that you will get a draft of this work in hopefully the next few weeks. There's a lot of reference documents and appendices to go with that we've had, that we've also been working on at the same time. And so you'll get a large package of stuff to review then. But as I go, if you have questions, please let me know. It went black again. Over the past several years, the port has taken significant steps to position itself as a leader among mid-sized ports to proactively mitigate for and adapt to the effects of climate change. If you recall, we've been working on various projects to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and identify priority adaptations needed to protect our assets from the effects of climate change. This climate action strategy develops policies that allow for coordinated implementation across port divisions, as well as the ability to track the effectiveness of our projects. The first step in the strategy was the roadmap to a climate action plan in 2019. We jumped ahead to 2021 over that blip of 2020. We held a visioning workshop that brought together port staff to agree on a vision for this climate work at the port. This vision is here in front of you, hopefully, to be a regional leader in sustainable economic growth while achieving greenhouse gas emission reduction targets and operational resiliency. I did have some other examples up in front of you from other ports. So, for example, the Port of Vancouver in British Columbia is to be the world's most sustainable port. It's a pretty lofty goal. Port of Seattle is to be the greenest, most energy efficient port in North America. And the Port of Portland gets a little more specific to lower greenhouse gas emissions by 15% below 1990 levels by 2020. So they put an actual greenhouse gas emission reduction target in their vision. I'm not sure, actually. That's a good question. Yeah, that's a good question. I'll follow up on that. So this is used as a mission statement for this climate action strategy initiative, and it will drive the more detailed processes that I'll describe later. One key point to remember as we go forward is that our climate action strategy includes both greenhouse gas reduction, which we call mitigation, as well as resiliency or adaptation. So that's how we respond and prepare for the effects of climate change on our infrastructure.
I love the fact that you left economic development as a part of it, because that is really what we're about. So that's music to my ears. Thank you.
Yeah, and there are ways to I believe, to meet our goals while reducing our impact.
We can measure our goals against the others as well, right? They may not be incompatible.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So what is a climate plan? A climate plan or strategy is, this one is actually defined by the Municipal Research and Services Center, so the MRSC, as a comprehensive policy tool outlining specific actions that an organization will undertake. I put up the wheel of climate planning. Sorry for the tiny font there, but we have data in form of our greenhouse gas inventory and the vulnerability assessment for 2 examples. We move into setting our goals and policy, developing the plans, and then implementing those plans, monitoring how we're doing, and then going back and getting more data. So it is an iterative process. It's very much alive. And as I mentioned, with this document of the strategy, we will have other associated appendices and reference documents as well. We will be tying this to the comprehensive scheme of harbor improvements so that there will be a formal process for an annual review of this, and it will be feeding into the annual budgeting and capital planning processes as well. The inclusion with the higher level plans is really crucial to track the existing work and to drive those future projects that we'll be talking about in a little bit here. So in addition to helping us plan for greenhouse gas reduction projects and protection against future extreme climate events such as storm surges, we have been noticing that we have external requests for information about this type of plan. So for example, applying for RAISE grants from the federal government for the shipping terminal, there was a large component asking about our climate action planning as part of that. And so it's from large funding opportunities right down to even small state funds like for electric vehicle charging stations. So people are paying attention to that when they're deciding on funding recipients.
So Adrian,
Yeah.
are the plans that we've made so far adequate for providing to those grant applications or those funding opportunities? And have we been able to effectively do that?
I believe so. Yeah, we have, because we've been working on this for so long, we were able to kind of plug in those holes as we needed to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting that we're seeing that level of integration into some of those major sources of funding.
They want to make sure that when they're awarding funding, it's to a project that isn't going to be subject to climate impacts that we haven't thought about. So.
Okay.
So what makes our climate action strategy a little different from other strategies that you might see with ports and other local jurisdictions is that ours include both mitigation and adaptation. So a lot of them only focus on one or the other. Both of these sort of streams also include goals, strategies, and actions, and I'll talk about those in a little bit as well. And those goals, depending on which stream you're talking about, on the emission reduction point, it's really looking specifically at what our emissions are, and we have specific goals for those. And on the adaptation side, there are strategies for governance, infrastructure, economic development, human health and safety, and the environment. So again, these as well as specific actions will be provided as appendices to the climate action strategy that you'll see. So the focus area 1 on the greenhouse gas reduction, the data that we are using for a lot of the actions that we're developing is the 2019 inventory. So we use that 2019 calendar year as the baseline for our work going forward. Our emission categories that we looked at are port-controlled buildings, so that's electricity and natural gas from the buildings where the port pays the majority of the bills. So we're not looking at those buildings where the tenants would have most of the control of those buildings. So that's an important distinction in all of this. So we're really focusing on port-controlled emissions. So we're also looking at the fuel that goes into our fleet vehicles. We're looking at our employee commuting, and we looked at the refrigerants used in our cooling systems in our buildings as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that inventory in the next slide here, and then go into an actual emission reduction target. So you may have seen this before, my beloved pie charts on the 2019 inventory. So the first one on the left shows the actual emissions that we measured in 2019. So greenhouse gases are measured in metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, so CO2e, because there are other greenhouse gases besides carbon dioxide. And then you convert everything into a carbon dioxide equivalent. So what we did is we looked at you can see the PSE and BPA electricity is the large orange component of that. So that was the largest portion of our emissions, followed by natural gas, fleet fuels, employee commuting, and then refrigerants. The pie chart on the right shows what happens when we go to Green Direct for our electricity supply. So we committed to that in 2021, so after 2019, and I just used that 2019 data to show what happens when we go to Green Direct, when we went to Green Direct, because it effectively took out all of the PSE electricity from the greenhouse gas emissions, because the PSE traditional mix has coal in it and natural gas. But when you go to Green Direct, which is solar and wind, that takes that down to no emissions per kilowatt hour that you purchase. So the total went from 5,687 down to 798. So that's an 86% reduction from 2019 levels just by going to Green Direct.
Is that where we're at today?
I would have to do a detailed inventory to tell you exactly what we're at today, but we can say that we have
Roughly,
reduced
that's
it.
where we're at. Okay, very good.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You can see here then on the right-hand side that the next largest component is natural gas and employee commuting and fleet fuels. So we'll talk about those in a little bit. So we're already at 86%. Where can we go from here in terms of our reduction?
Can you fill me in a little bit on the PSE BPA methods for that Green Direct? How do they achieve such a tremendous amount of efficiency?
So utilities are required to do calculations that they report, which has an emission. It's called an emissions factor that is associated with each kilowatt hour of electricity that you purchase. So I can't remember the exact number off the top of my head for their traditional mix, which includes electricity that's generated by coal, by burning coal and natural gas. And when they went to solar and wind, that went down to zero.
So most of this is solar and wind power generation?
By going to Green Direct, yes.
So Green Direct, so we're the beneficiary of solar and wind energy production, and it reduced BPA and PSEs by?
It took out the PSE.
Almost 100%.
Yep. The thing that's left is BPA, and that's in Blaine. That's all of our customers in Blaine, or our purchases in Blaine.
Do they consider hydro?
Because
That's
it's
part of
hydro. So it's very clean power, but it's not quite zero. Okay.
Yeah,
Good? Okay. No, that's okay.
just wrapping my head around that.
Yeah, no, that's understandable. But definitely feel free to jump in if I can provide more clarity. Okay, so this is the target that staff recognize as being achievable and realistic. Again, this is for port-controlled emissions. So this is a reduction from 2019 levels, so before we went to Green Direct, down by at least 90% by the year 2030, and then the target would be to be greenhouse gas neutral by the year 2050, which would be in line with state and city goals as well. So I did put in the city and county government targets below. So the city and county are a little different. Obviously, they're larger and they have residences to count as part of their emission inventories. So they separated things. They have what they call government targets and community targets. So I've just included the government targets here. So that would be for their own government-controlled buildings and operations. Their community targets are much lower. They're around 40 or 45%.
So Adrian, I always have a problem when someone puts 100% up there. We're going to achieve 100%, we're going to 0. Is that a reality, or is it 98% or 99 more of a reality? Because at 100%, I mean, I don't like it when numbers like that come up. I said, I don't believe they can get there.
Right.
So is it a reality?
It is a reality. I believe we can get there. We may have to do some purchasing of offset credits to get there. So if we can reduce our own emissions as much as we can, and then look for meaningful local offsets, which are effectively, like, when you buy an airline ticket and they give you an opportunity to spend $2 extra and offset the carbon emissions from your flight, that's an offset that may or may not be meaningful, because you may not be able to trace that. But we would be looking for something that's, more of a regional, like a tree planting exercise, or maybe a blue carbon project, or we don't know what's out there at this point. So hopefully by 2050, there will be. And technology is changing so fast with all of this stuff. So again, it's a target. It's not a binding target, but it would be a good target for us.
Problem is, people run around and throw these numbers all over, and it's, is it really true or not? So like you say, who knows? I guess we'll find out. Thank you.
Okay, pardon me. The next steps on this, there are actions listed we have a long list of actions, which I'll talk about again later. I'm not actually kicking everything down to the end of the presentation, although I feel like it. But 2 of those actions that are next steps directly to this, one would be considering a building energy efficiency target. Because our electricity goes to 0, we still have an end to Green Direct, and that's another thing we don't know the end of at this point. So that's an 18-year commitment, and we're not exactly sure what our power source will be at the end of that. Plus, it helps reduce our costs, and it helps us measure things. So if we have management systems to help keep an eye on our energy efficiency, if we have policies that are helping our buildings just be more weatherproof, where we're more comfortable inside them, where our lighting is brighter or dimmer or whatever it is you want it to be, that's one recommendation that we were looking at. And another one, another action for probably further down the road, but just to make you aware of at this point, is a strategy to partner with tenants to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, help them meet other targets from other jurisdictions like the county and the city, and see if there's ways that we can help them meet those as well. Any questions on that?
So Adrian, at this point, we're just kind of assuming Green Direct is going to, there will be another opportunity, another Green Direct Phase 2 or some other implementation that we can be a part of. But we don't, it's a bit out there in terms of time, so I'm sure PSC doesn't know the answer to that either, but they're going to have a lot of customers who are like us, who are doing all this work, kind of banking on those numbers to go forward. So we're not going to be the only ones asking to re-up our commitment to Green Direct.
That's right.
Why would it go away in 18 years?
We have a commitment to 18 years. That's what our contract is, and that's the longest that they offered with this program. And that's partly on how they fund these actual wind and solar projects.
So they need to reinvest in their infrastructure in order to meet the commitment again if we renew, is kind of the take. Is it the lifespan of the equipment, or is it?
That is a very good question. It could be. Could be.
Well, we don't know.
We don't know.
So I have a question with our fleet consumption there. What is our policy moving forward with replacing pickup trucks and stuff now that we have I shouldn't say readily available, but available electric vehicles, because we really don't have long uses for our stuff.
Yeah, we do want to go to electric vehicles. We're having some trouble. We've been in line to buy Ford Lightnings for a long time now, and they keep getting delayed. And then we're hearing of towing issues, and we tow a lot of trailers. So we want to make sure the vehicles are going to work for our purposes. But we will have 3 Lightnings show up sometime in probably the next 6 months, depending on the back order. And the same with other vehicles. We'll definitely go to electricity when we can.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have some horsepower vehicles around to do what you're supposed
Yep.
to tow.
Yeah. The utility trucks and stuff just can't. They can't be electric yet.
Right. I'd like to see us keep moving when we're replaced, as long as we're using the green thing, so. Go ahead.
When those show up, can
Did we test drive
get a
them or
test
what?
drive?
Absolutely. You're in line right after me.
I hear they've got some great torque.
I think compared to Bobby's electric car, they won't be quite as fast. But practical with truck beds.
Will we have to park them in 2 parking places like Bobby does his new car?
I'm not in 2 places, what are you talking about? I'm within the lines, and all 4 cameras said so. Please go ahead, Adrian.
Sorry, it's a light agenda, so.
That's all?
We're stretching it, we're milking it here, is what we're doing.
Okay, so the second focus of the climate action strategy is adaptation, which again is how we prepare for the effects of climate change. This has definitely been in the news recently, unfortunately, over the weekend. In particular, we saw what happens with storm surges, unfortunately, in Florida and in all over the East Coast. So this adaptation portion of the climate action strategy is a part of our larger resiliency work. We do have a number of large initiatives that have produced deliverables that we'll be providing to you as well. The first one is actually linked to our website now, so you can go and look at the Cosmos web viewer, which looks at sea level rise and storm surges and has all kinds of fun things to play with there. We also have done a port-wide sea level rise vulnerability assessment, which helped us to identify priority areas to look at next. And one of those first areas talk about next is the maintenance shop, which we did a site-specific exposure, sensitivity, and adaptive capacity analysis. So we're going to affectionately call that ESA because it's impossible to say. We've also used a lot of the information from that in developing some projects that are happening right now or in design phases, such as FMIP, so the Fairhaven Marine Industrial Park. We're looking at how we can make that site more resilient as well.
Can you send us the link to that?
Yep, definitely. Mm-hmm.
And just off the top of your head, if you have it, where are the areas we're most vulnerable? What inland areas?
Kurt, I'm going to let Kurt speak to that, if you don't mind.
I was just looking for a way to get him up.
Yep.
Good afternoon, Kurt Baumgarten, Port Environmental Planner. So we're looking towards bringing you guys some information in the future about exactly what we've come up with as with the different tools here, and so we'll bring to you kind of a broader overview of where we're at. I mean, just a lot of the stuff we're seeing right now is pretty intuitive. I mean, the flooding we've seen down at Lower Squalicum, so that's an area that is definitely one that the vulnerability assessment has highlighted that we'd want to be focusing on. The flooding down at Mount Baker Products last year in November, which is almost a year ago now, and the road being closed. So that's something we're keeping an eye on. The maintenance shop, FMIP area, and the maintenance shop we picked because it's solely port controlled, and we're looking at some options moving forward there. There's some other areas that looking a little further out may have some issues, and so we're just going to use the information to start prioritizing because fortunately, unlike the East Coast, we do have some time on our side to start getting ahead of this.
If we looked at that Cosmos site, would we be able to see some of those areas? Is there a pretty clear graph?
Yeah, so the Cosmos web viewer that we have online allows you to choose a number of different storm scenarios, so 10 50, 100-year storm, that type of thing. And then also look at different sea level rise. So you'd toggle buttons on and off, and then you would actually get a map. So you can zoom in to port properties. It's also Whatcom County wide. So I can assure you can spend a lot of time with that.
Can we get a link to that?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
I did want to mention some other projects that are underway that have some aspects of this planning included in them. One is the Little Squalicum Beach, which if you haven't looked at it, is pretty cool right now. They've looked at a 10-to-1 slope, which is a little more gentle than normal, and that helps to dissipate wave energy as it hits the beach. And it's got an elevated final grade, which is 2 to 3 feet above the existing grade. The FMIP, again, Fairhaven Marine Industrial Park, that also has an elevated final grade, and it's armored with an adaptable berm, which essentially is, I think, piling more rocks on there in my non-engineering terms. And then the Fairhaven hand launch at the boat launch is, they've increased the pile size on that and made an adaptable abutment, which is the top of the ramp, so they can raise that fairly easily if needed.
I don't see anything with the waterfront district on theirs. Are there any adaptive planning that we are expecting to see coming in the future for that site?
I would leave that question to Brian, probably. Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Commissioner. Brian Gower, Director of Environmental Planning. Right now, we haven't focused on that area, aside from most of the shoreline planning is with the city parks team. So, they did take into account sea level rise assumptions for the Waypoint Park, for example, as well as all the permitting for the projects that are underway right now. So the city kind of leads that, and they do have a provision in their shoreline program that has a kind of a number to assign to it, but then they said based on best available science, they can adjust that, and they're in the process of doing that now. So any future project that needs to be permitted would be under those regulations. Any project that, and most of those projects are really other parties. So whereas these examples are port-led projects, whereas if we're doing the project, we may we're going to be using that Cosmos tool and those other tools to really inform our design decisions. So we're encouraging the city. The city was partner in the Cosmos effort, so they also have that tool available to them, and they'll be using that probably in some of their regulatory updates or their best available science things. So, but nothing that's specific right now. I think most of the projects are kind of either under construction or are in the permitting phase that are led by another party.
Okay. So. Yeah, I ask because it's a frequent question I get about the waterfront district is, hey, it's really low sea level elevation. It's one of our lower elevation properties, but we're doing a lot of building there. And I know the city and the port have both taken into account sea level rise as part of their planning for years, and in considering the permitting there as well. And that's part of what we're going to continue planning around. And we're not we're not alone in building out waterfront properties. That happens all over the region. We were just in Copenhagen, and Copenhagen is building tons of property on the water, right, very close proximity to sea level. They have this interesting strategy. When they run out of land, they just build more by filling in the ocean.
Just build the buildings taller. Yeah. Just lose a floor too.
Yeah.
That's the giant aquarium.
We may not do infill here anymore, but we are still, building at sea level with others around the world are continuing to do that as well. So, and it's just something we are taking into account, which is a frequent question I get.
You're just going to drop that you went to Copenhagen every meeting now through the end of the year because we didn't get to go.
Maybe.
When you were in Copenhagen. So my question is, how much of this are we doing in conjunction with the city and the county? Because it looks to me, and I'll just take the Fairhaven boat launch for an example, a lot of the destruction is going to be behind us, right? We may have a very good boat dock, but we're not going to be able to save the rail. And that's a huge waterway. So all of the infrastructure that we're putting in may be the only thing standing, but what we really need is behind us. So how much of this is in partnership with others?
That is a very good point.
That's three of
And-
those today.
3 good points.
I've got a limit.
Yeah. I think part of what we've found and what we're trying to develop is the relationships with other jurisdictions locally, and make sure that we are aware of what the projects and the policies, and how we can coordinate on all of these projects. Okay, specific actions. So these are long lists, and I, again, want to thank everybody for bearing with us when we went through them with everyone in great detail over and over. We had 2 lists, one on the adaptation side, which was 74 actions in 20 strategies, and 73 actions and 15 strategies specifically for port-controlled emissions on the greenhouse gas reduction side. I wanted to provide just an example of a couple of them so you could see what those look like here. So these are on the greenhouse gas side, where there's an action in place, or an action that's suggested, the time frame to start implementing it. So 1-5, we used 10 years as well, or long-term. The potential greenhouse gas emission reductions, comments associated with how this was calculated. Then we looked at the low and the high end range of carbon dioxide equivalents, metric tons off those, so that we could see how much of a chunk we could take out of our emissions going forward, and whether or not that would help us meet those targets. And then the lead port division as well. One more thing. With the actions, some of the actions on the list are already in place. Some of them have been added to the budget request for 2023 and beyond as well. So you may see some of these that look a little familiar going forward. Okay, so next steps are to get that draft to you soon, hopefully, in the next quarter. And then we would like to have a public outreach and engagement process, which will involve a social media campaign, posting it on the website, and being available for public comment as well. Hopefully, again, starting in the fourth quarter of 2022 and into the first quarter of 23. Then we'll bring it to you for adoption formally. Ongoing work, which will continue for the foreseeable future, is ongoing coordination with regional partners. So that includes Whatcom County, the City of Bellingham, small cities, WTA, Western Washington University, hopefully the tribes, and also our MAC and the Working Waterfront Coalition as well. And then getting to work on all those lists of actions as well. So that's it for me. Do you have any more questions?
Mr. Shepherd, any questions?
I just want to start with thanking Rob for really putting together a great team. We've hired great people to do this work, and it's really exciting for me to see our staff really working as a whole, division by division, contributing to this. And that's what it takes. If an organization is going to be successful in making headway and making change, we've got to have this has to be a kind of, port-wide initiative. And I feel like we've succeeded in putting in the groundwork to make that happen. And we've got some meaningful and manageable targets to meet, and a lot of work to do. And that's great. That's kudos to both Rob for some good hiring and direction, and for all the staff that have worked on this. I have a question about the tenants, and I've always thought it would be useful to have something like a revolving loan fund for our tenants who want to make investments in their property. It can be challenging for somebody who doesn't own the land. They might own the building, they might not own the building, but how can we provide them some options to invest in energy conservation, energy transitions, or energy production at their facilities? Because we're going to benefit from that as a community, And if we had some sort of revolving loan fund, that money could continue to circulate around and be available to other tenants as well.
I think that's a Rob question.
Yeah, it gets tricky when we start lending money, but I think a way to do this would be to do it inside their leases. So we could track, we set aside a sum of money that we want to use, and we could track it just on a spreadsheet and say, okay, this is available to this business. And then when they used it, we just increased their lease by that amount to pay it back over whatever that amortization period would be. And then we get away from the gifting and the lending issues. So it's definitely possible. So let me work with Elliot and our climate team and see what we can come up with there. Our constraints are that we don't have unlimited capital, obviously. So figuring out what that number is going to be, I think is going to be the trick. But we'll put something together and come back to you with that.
I thought we planted some of those money trees. Aren't they coming fruit?
It was a dry year. It was a very dry year.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's going to be part of the longer range strategy is how do we incentivize and work with our tenants, because we're doing some great work on buildings that we have a lot of control over, but we don't have control over a lot of the properties in the same way. Good. Well, exciting work.
Maybe the way to do that is to take a look at which tenants would be the most benefited by, boy, that's horrible English.
Beneficial.
The ones, yeah, the tenants that generate the most and would have the greatest impact if we actually gave them some assistance, rather than just a blanket loan fund, but find out who our big offenders are.
Yeah, I think there's probably
We'd establish an amount, and then we'd go through and say, okay, here's the tenants we recommend that we do. And I don't know that the criteria is the tenants, we'd have to discuss this, but is it the tenants that benefit the most or the ones that have the least means to be able to do it on their own? Some of our tenants have pretty good cash flow, and they could do it on their own.
Yeah. Some have a lot of motivation, not a lot of capital. Some have,
What's
the
the
other.
most beneficial to job increasement?
Well, and our metric seems to be getting that.
That's a good one.
Circle. Oh, yeah, that too. Yeah, trying to get that circle smaller.
Yep.
Or proportioned differently.
Michael, do you have?
Sorry. Nope, thank you very much.
Commissioner Bell.
No, so did you give us a list of the projects? Can you go back to that slide?
I gave you some examples of.
Is there actually a list of those
Yep.
74 actions?
Yep, it'll be coming to you with the rest of the climate action strategies. So there's two lists. One is on the adaptation side with those specific strategies and goals. And then there's another on the greenhouse gas mitigation side.
And how do you judge that? What's the cost benefit? What's your metric for deciding?
That is a good question. We're not quite there yet.
That's still in that black hat that they pull the rabbits out of.
I think looking at which ones we do have numbers, like on the greenhouse gas reduction side, we're able to estimate the amount of reduction that you would get with that type of a project. So that will help us decide what to recommend. On the adaptation side, it's a little different. Sometimes it's the cost of not doing the project, and how does that influence the prioritization. So yeah, that's going to be a big job, deciding which ones to do first.
Yeah, with limited resources, and I'm sure we've got a ton of projects, that we should have some idea what that metric looks like, and we should understand it as a commission what the metric was that we used.
Yeah, so the lists that we have are not prioritized yet. So that is still one of the next steps.
And I guess the next question is, are you asking us to adopt this before we have those prioritized?
Oh.
So-
You're not being asked to adopt anything today. It's just an update.
No, I don't mean.
Yeah.
When this comes forward, will we have had an opportunity to determine what that metric is and what that priority looks like prior to us adopting the?
Looks like Brian wants to say
Chime in just a little bit. Yeah, I think, the way we envisioned this a little bit was, we're early in this, right? So we're just getting all those actions lined out. Some of the ones you'll see, actually, like Adrian said, some of them we're already doing, like that we're already underway with. So we want to get the low hanging fruit. Those are the easy ones to do. There's things that are already in the plan. We want to kind of capture those. So those are going to be obviously the high priority because we're already going to do them. Then part of the sensitive is an iterative process, is to kind of have this ongoing. It's kind of a living document, right? So the first step is to get all these out. I think to have completed staff work, we'd want to go through that, see which ones that we think would have the biggest impact, look at the cost, see how we would budget for those, then bring those forward in our annual budget process. And that would be, part of adopting this strategy gives, like Commissioner Shepard had mentioned, kind of a port-wide initiative to kind of prioritize projects. And so we'll be needing to balance what are the infrastructure needs for other reasons. Maybe we can add on a little bit that actually has another benefit from the climate perspective, that kind of thing. So it's really just, this is the first chunk, just to get these listed. I don't think prioritization right now is for adoption is needed, because this will be ongoing. And like Adrian had mentioned, that we anticipate if we do have updates, that with our annual comprehensive scheme of harbor improvements, we would update and adopt that as well. So we'll have a rolling process where we can have commission input on all this prioritization too.
Yeah, I just think it's important to know what the rationale is behind the projects we do.
Yep,
So
agreed.
We're not spending money on something that has no impact.
Yep,
If we're
definitely.
going to spend money, let's have a ton of impact
Agreed.
rather than very little. They may be low-hanging fruit, but are they as beneficial as if we'd spent that money somewhere else? That thought process I'd like to understand.
Sure. Okay. That's a good note for future updates too. When we go to adopt and we bring this forward, maybe that's a discussion point of kind of we can take this back and work on it a little bit and come with some recommendations on that.
Thank you, Brian.
I got all mine out during Michael's session.
Well, Adrian, thank you for the update. It was very thorough. Questions were answered. Greatly appreciate staff, all the staff that worked on this. I think every month goes by and we see the Port of Bellingham strive to do the right thing. I think we've been a leader in this county for quite some time now. With the old saying, in layman's terms, we get her done. We bump into a problem. We don't just stop. We kind of figure out how to fix it or how to go around it and make it happen. And that makes our job up here a lot easier than it would be if we didn't have that. So we greatly appreciate our staff and what they do. I was glad to read, I think it was in the emails I was reading, about the chargers that we're putting in around on the port properties. That'll be helpful to tenants and staff who may be driving those types of vehicles. But question, how much does it cost to put a charger in? Do we know roughly?
I can get you the ROMs that we've used for those particular projects.
Do we have any grant stuff available for that type of installation, or?
There may be coming from the Department of Commerce, excuse me, but we need matching funds for that type of funding. And there's other funding that's just been announced that we need to respond to in they gave us about a week to respond. So the more shovel-ready projects we have for that type of funding, the better our chances of getting it.
Good. No, thank you for making that happen. It's good to see that we're moving along with everybody else. That's all I have. Once again, thank you to staff and yourself, Adrian. So, I believe we have the end of meeting public comment. Anybody have anything to say? Do we have anyone online that wishes to speak? Free your mic up and speak now, please. Hearing none, we'll move on to other business. And I'll throw the mic over this way first.
I got all my questions answered while Michael was in Copenhagen.
Did he bring us any Copenhagen from Copenhagen?
I did not get a Copenhagen gift basket. I have not.
Michael, other business?
I don't have any other business, no. I'll be waiting for my, Copenhagen update for next week.
Okay, well, I just have one thing, and I haven't really spoken to Ryan, I haven't spoken to anybody of this about it, except some of the harbor staff, but the stuff that's accumulating around our parking lots has gotten ridiculous. I mean, I've been here my entire life, and I just see it getting worse and worse and worse, and I'm probably going to take some heat from some of my fellow fishermen and folks about storage stuff, but the storage that we kind of provided that didn't cost anything is certainly being abused, in my opinion, and I've been here my entire life, and I think it's just gotten to the ridiculous point in my mind, and we need to clean it up. We've got trees growing out of carts with nets under the trees. I mean, we've got stuff sitting around that nobody wants to take care of. And I think that's probably the part that bothers me the most is my fellow industry members don't want to clean up their mess and be responsible for what they've got stored. So that, as usual, the abusive members of society bring things to a point to where it costs other people money. So I'm telling my fellow commissioners this because I'm kind of looking for their opinion on this as well, but my opinion is it needs to be cleaned up. If it's not going to be used and it's junk, it needs to go away. It's not in our parking lot. And all of the gear needs to be stowed in the storage yard, which I think we're going to have to increase size to accommodate, but there's going to be no more free storage in our parking lots. Our parking lot are for parking. We don't have enough as it is. To anybody that wants to look at this YouTube and my fellow industry members and wants to chew on somebody, give me a call. We'll have a talk. But we need to clean it up. You need to do your part to clean it up, and the port's going to do their part to clean it up. And it's going to happen. So that's the warning to those guys.
Yeah, Commissioner, thank you for that. Tiffany and I have already discussed expanding that storage area and getting some dumpsters in the harbors so that we can start a major cleanup effort. So we'll take those first steps and report back.
I would like to see a period of time given for amnesty so they can come collect it, and if it's not collected under a certain period of time, it absolutely goes away. But everybody gets notified, we're doing this, we go through, and then if it's not gone in however reasonable period of time, it goes away completely. And then we're not burdened with storing it in perpetuity.
You know, I'm not trying to create hardships for anyone here, but there comes a point in time that you have to be responsible for your stuff. I mean, I bought acreage, I built a building, I'm responsible for my stuff. I don't have anything sitting around the harbor, I got a boat moored and that's it. I had web lockers and I gave them up so other people could have them. If you can't keep it in your web locker or in front of your web locker, it needs to go to the storage lot, and that's where I'm at on it, and pretty much not going to back up and bend on it. Okay. So, anything else?
I had one more I forgot about. I just wanted to mention how exciting it's been this fall to see a fall Chinook run here in Whatcom Creek, and I really want to give kudos to Bellingham Technical College's hatchery program and their partnership with both Lummi Nation and Nooksack Nation. Seeing big, healthy Chinooks come back in the creek has just been a thrill. The amount of people down there fishing, watching, just enjoying that part of the, part of our local, history and environment here has just been really fantastic. I love seeing that restarted and the work that's gone into it. Looking for, to see that continue, and we're gonna, as a community, keep doing what we can to make sure there's adequate habitat for those fish to spawn as well. But really exciting development to see that occurring.
And don't forget to give kudos to Mother Nature for doing the things in the ocean she's done to provide the food for the fish to come back.
Yeah.
And on that subject, the North Fork and the South Fork of the Nooksack have record numbers of Chinook in them.
That's great.
So we had a fishery here in Bellingham Bay that was phenomenal this year. I think if we went back in time, you'd probably have to go back to probably the 70s when I first started fishing on my own operation here to find those kind of numbers.
Yeah.
So La Nina is very welcome. We like the cold water, and it's great to see the fish come. The whales are gonna have some food in the future. Things are looking better.
I agree.
Anything further, Commissioner Shepherd? Staff, anything to say?
Yeah, just Trackside closes down this Sunday, I think is the last day. And then I believe Selkie Scoop is already closed down. So get your last licks down at the Container Village and we'll start shutting her down for the winter.
So is Rain or Shine going to go away too?
I think they're going to take some hiatuses here and there, but they're going to mostly go Wednesday through Sunday, not open on Monday and Tuesdays. They're going to try and make it through some portions of the winter and be closed at other times. I think it'll largely be weather dependent, I imagine. If it's really bad weather, they won't open.
But Colson's going to go.
Colson's completely shut down, as is the Selkie Scoop, and I believe Dish is shut down as well.
No, Dish has limited hours, and she's still figuring it out. But if you look on our website, I did a post yesterday with the days and times that they gave me. Sunnyland is going just to weekend bike rental until the end of October, and then they're done. And then the Riviera, they're gonna go limited hours until the end of October, and then they're leaning towards being done and having a break. In the rotating container, it's fully booked until the end of the month, and we also have a few food trucks that are still gonna linger until the end of the month. So pretty much at the end of October, you're gonna see that space go dormant, so we can get ready for phase 2.
Trick or treat. So I do have one thing I'd like to mention that I almost forgot. Blaine, this coming Saturday, is having kind of an oyster fest or a mini sea feast, if you want to call it that. So pass the word around, and they're back. They got oyster stew back on the menu. They just brought that back. They had it gone for the summer for some reason. I don't know. I eat it in the summer. It's good. But anyways, Blaine's got an event going on this Saturday that is going to have some very good eats available. So seems like things are percolating right along up there. So anything else, ladies and gentlemen? Nothing? Meeting adjourned.